Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com and RockAuto.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
And thank you, Alec Webb. And here we are for MotorWeek podcast remote style number 229. And delighted to have you with us, and with us also on our little Zoom forum today, writer, two-wheeling reporter Brian Robinson.
Hello, everybody. I'm currently in Dick Cheney's undisclosed location right now.
This little bunker, huh? Over the Edge reporter Greg Carlos.
Hello from my home.
And road test producer who hasn't been doing a lot of road testing lately, that's Kyle Scanlon.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here.
We've got a lot of things to run down today. We're going to talk about a special that if you haven't been to our MotorWeek YouTube page lately, you might want to take a look at. We're going to talk about some delays for some electric vehicles, the new Hyundai Sonata Hybrid, and also the new Mercedes-Benz GLA. And we've got a lightning round, a viewer question. We'll see if anybody's got a thorn in their side about anything. But let's get with it. We did something a little unusual, and it's up on YouTube at the youtube.com/MotorWeek. We did it primarily for our region here in Maryland. We call it MotorWeek Goes for a Drive, and what we did was take a series of GoPros, Greg Carlos's ingenuity, and send him off on a little journey just for people that just can't get outside and take a ride or don't want to take a ride because of the stay-at-home orders that we've got not only in Maryland, but many states around the country. So, Greg, give us a little background as to what you did, and we can talk about it. Which, by the way, there's no talking on the show, very little anyway.
Yeah, thank God nobody had to suffer through my voice for 24 minutes of just shouting out things I see. So the idea came across, and at first we weren't really sure how to approach it. We weren't sure like if it was something that people would be into, but what else were we doing at the time?
Well, that's true.
Yeah, so it was really just a matter of grabbing a couple of GoPros and some audio equipment and kind of planning out a route. And, it wasn't as simple as just slapping them on and driving.
No.
I mean, there's some thought that goes into it. Yeah, there's, not only, it's not so much of driving, which I found out, doing the route is just sitting and waiting for, at stoplights or pedestrians, especially in downtown Annapolis. So like there's probably another half-hour show of just waiting to get onto the road, But our editor did a great job. Roger was able to sync it all up, and it actually worked out pretty well. And thank God the weather stayed nice that whole day.
Yeah, you went from Annapolis, Maryland, through up around historic Annapolis, up by the Naval Academy, St. John's College. Then you headed out and eventually went over the Bay Bridge. And then you stopped at, Hemingway's restaurant on the other side of the Bay Bridge.
Yep, Hemingway's at Kent Island. It's which I have actually never been there before. I've been over that bridge a million times, but I've never actually gotten off that first exit. And you got a nice little view back of the Bay Bridge. Unfortunately, GoPros with their focal length don't really see that far. But it was, for me, it was a nice way to get out and drive. And I actually think it came through in the finished product of just, feeling kind of good on a peaceful spring drive. So surprisingly, that came through.
And we got lucky because we've had so much rain here in Maryland. It was probably like the one really clear day in the last couple of weeks. If you're interested, it's kind of nice, or a nice, relaxing way to get outside without having to leave your home. Put it up on your big screen or whatever. It's called MotorWeek Goes for a Drive, and it's up on youtube.com/MotorWeek. And I don't know if Brian or Kyle had any comment on it. What'd you think of it, guys? I mean, was it something that you think people would enjoy?
It turned out better than what I thought. Just hearing the idea of it didn't sound that cool to me, but seeing it all put together, I think they actually did a pretty good job with it, and I enjoyed watching it.
How about you, Kyle?
I thought it looked really good. I can definitely attest to Greg, since I live right next to Annapolis and I'm driving around Annapolis all the time, that there's a lot of waiting at lights. There's a lot of waiting for pedestrians. that sort of thing. So I can understand that there'd be another 20 minutes to 30 minutes of extra footage outside of what was, put on the program. But like Greg said, Roger did a great job putting it all together, and I'm glad the viewers liked it.
If you ever have doubts, folks, about editing and how important editing is in film and television, it's what makes a good show good. I mean, audio's great, pictures are great, but if you don't put them together in the right order, it's not so great. So we hope you enjoyed it. Let's talk about some of the fallout that we've seen in the last really just week from the COVID-19 virus and everybody being shut down so long. We're seeing cancellations, particularly in the electric vehicle area. We've seen Tesla, basically, Mr. Musk, just having practically a meltdown in front of financial people and journalists about what's going on there, even though he made money last quarter. Anybody want to just chime in and say, what is going on? I mean, obviously, a lot of companies, the car companies, are losing a lot of money, and this is having repercussions.
Yeah, I mean, basically, everything just came to a stop. I mean, you can't develop, you can't build, you can't. I mean, there's a limit to what you can do on these Zoom meetings, which a lot of the car manufacturers, all of them, I'm sure, are meeting daily. But there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, it was definitely coming. I mean, of course, the Hummer was the big one, but GM's not new to delaying stuff. I mean, look at the Corvette and Silverado and just about everything else that comes out gets delayed. I think the bigger deal was Ford canceling the Lincoln Rivian SUV. That was maybe a bigger deal, just straight up canceling it. But yeah, I mean, there's probably going to be more stuff to come.
Kyle, you basically spend most of your life behind cars. Are you surprised with anything that's going on? I mean,
in one aspect, it can be kind of surprising, but you could see it coming. People are out there buying cars. No one's spending money in those kind of areas. So it seems like the logical thing to do to either push things back or cancel them and wait until things get back to normal and decide like, okay, we can pick up this project again because we have enough money or we have enough manpower. I'm thinking of when I went to the Atlas Cross Sport reveal down in Knoxville, I believe, in Tennessee. And it was, going around that factory and seeing how close all those people have to work, the idea of social distancing and any of those big plants, it's just non-existent. So of course they had to shut down, and that's going to affect everybody down the line.
Chattanooga, and you're absolutely right.
That's what I meant.
It's you can't imagine. I mean, they're talking now about opening some plants soon, like within a week or two, and it's hard to imagine on the final assembly where you've got people putting in interiors and everything, how they could work close together and not infect each other. So probably we're going to see a lot more of this. Why don't we talk about a couple of vehicles that we have a little bit more knowledge of, and one of them is the Hyundai Sonata Hybrid. Who would like to start? 2-liter i4, but with a 39 kilowatt electric motor, 54 mpg highway. It looks pretty interesting.
Yeah, I can start off. It's interesting to me that, Ford has the hybrid now, Camry has a hybrid. So the most interesting one was the Ford Fusion, which they quit making. So it would have been an interesting segment now with so many of them in there. I think the Hyundai, they're all specs. If you look at the specs, they're all super similar. The Hyundai gets a little bit better highway miles per gallon, I think by one number, but they're all pretty similar. The Hyundai has a true automatic transmission. Some people may like, some people may not. Other than that, they're all similar. They did with the solar panel roof, they did a good job of making it something special, whereas like the Accord and the Camry are just hybrid versions of the Accord and Camry.
Yeah, I guess the only thing you can't get, with that solar panel roof, you can't get a sunroof, but it's a very good looking vehicle. I actually like the fact that they toned it down. It doesn't look quite as aggressive as the standard sedan, but that's probably just me. But isn't it amazing that you can get now like, mid 50s in something that big? I mean, these are big cars. They're what we used to call full-size cars as far as the interior.
Yeah, especially on the highway, and hybrids generally are known for their great fuel or highway fuel economy. I mean, they're they're good. Don't get me wrong, but generally you see those high numbers. They like to tout their city numbers because that's when a hybrid's most efficient. But we're talking mid 50s on the highway, and I mean that's huge because myself right now I'm driving our Outlander PHEV, and as much as it saves us in the city on the highway, that's where you really see that fuel tank start to kind of really dip down a lot faster than you want it to. So
it's got a small tank too.
Yeah, and so I'd imagine having, I think it was like 686 miles of range on a full tank with the Sonata hybrid. You know, maybe that's like the absolute best case scenario. I'm sure it is. But still, I mean, I'm sure you wouldn't have any trouble going to the high 500s and low 600s.
Mm-hmm. You've been in the standard Sonata. Did you come away feeling, I mean, a lot's been made of it, and we have too at MotorWeek. It seems to really be a surprising car that they elevated it that far up the ladder, given the fact that sedans have been losing favor.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And, you know, unfortunately, being the last one down the line here, both Brian and Greg kind of touched on all the points that I was going to touch on as well, with it being.
Feel free to do it again. No.
Yeah, you know, the 600-mile range, the solar sunroof, all that kind of stuff is really interesting. I do love the way it looks. I saw, you know, when it was revealed, they had it in kind of a burnt orange, which seems to be a trend lately in a lot of cars. There seems to be a lot more that we've gotten that have been in, you know, some shade of orange, and some of them I haven't been a fan of, but honestly on this Sonata, I think it looks pretty good. The car looks sleek. The interior looks really nice. And, you know, having that kind of range and being able to comfortably fit 4 adults in it, I think is really, really good.
Oh, I got to ask everybody, do you think if you had a Sonata that has the self-park system, we see it in the ads and they had the Super Bowl ad, think you'd use it more than once or twice?
Oh, yeah.
You would?
I would. Yeah. Why not?
Because it takes forever, and I could park and unpark 3 times at the same time.
I'd be so anxious the whole time. I'm anxious enough, you know, trying to park myself in a city setting. I can't imagine just letting a computer do it and then be like, yeah, totally, just park yourself. It'll be fine.
Yeah, I don't know. Standing out there and having the car come at you, I just hope it would stop.
More important question, Greg. Yeah. This is for you. Would you let it pull through into the cross?
Greg's got a real problem with people that pull through 2 spaces to be heading out.
You know my stance on that.
Yeah, I guess you better not hang around me much.
I was going to say, I just did that when I was at the store before this podcast.
Oh, yeah, I do it all the time.
There's just no rules. That's, you guys live in anarchy.
Let's move on to new Mercedes-Benz, the GLA. It's a really nice looking, I mean, this is a revamp of the existing model, but the GLA 250, 2-liter i4 turbo, 221 horsepower. Lots of other versions, the GLA 45 with almost 400 horsepower, and the GLA 35, 300 horsepower. Brian, is it more than just a little bit of a change? Your opinion?
I was going to go last on this one, so I didn't steal everything, but I guess
still half of them.
You're good.
It's a huge deal because the previous GLA wasn't even an SUV. It was the A-class hatchback from Europe, which they don't even sell here. They put all-wheel drive on it and called it an SUV. So this one actually looks like it. I wasn't even sure that they would continue the GLA since they just brought the GLB out, which is super nice and not much bigger. But it's a bigger deal for Europe because they didn't have an SUV this size over there. So it's a big deal for them and big deal for everyone. I think they did a good job with it. I was surprised they put such an emphasis on off-road capability, almost like a mini Land Rover. But I'm sure that'll help with sales a little bit. And I'll wrap that up so everyone else has a little something to say.
All right. Let Kyle go before everybody says everything.
Okay. So one thing I find a little interesting is the wing on the 45. I was looking at all of them side by side, and I thought that was a styling touch that I don't think needed to be there. Throwing it on, it's just a little over the top. The fact that it's supposed to be it's an SUV, and like Brian said, they're talking about off-road capability. What is a spoiler going to add with any sort of off-road capability is, next to nothing. I can only imagine. And to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the digital gauge cluster. There's so much screen in front of you in all three models. It's just, it seems like a little too much. It's just a little bit over the top for me.
Is it just that it's too, what's the word I'm looking for? Takes your attention away from the road?
It's distracting. Like,
It's distracting.
even when I'm looking at photos and I'm trying to get, a feel for the rest of the interior and what it might be like as a passenger, or, the little touchpad that's down by your right hand, all I can focus on is those two gigantic screens. That's what my eye goes to every time I'm looking at the interior of these cars.
I mean, we haven't been in it, so I'm just wondering how it's going to handle big people. And Greg, you're tall. Go ahead.
I'm sure it'll handle me fine. I'm not that wide, luckily. So
Thanks a lot.
Take it easy, guys. Take it easy.
Now, I kind of wanted to speak on the the GLA 35, because I remember when the 45, the original GLA, came out. That was a brutal little beast, man. It was so stiff and just so loud and gnarly, which is cool. But also when you just want to come into the neighborhood and not wake everybody's dog and not feel every pothole. I think the 35, that's where that's going to step in. It has a little bit less horsepower, but still like 300, I think 301.
And a small vehicle. So.
Yeah, so it'll go a long way. I think I'm actually a little bit more curious to drive the 35 over the 45.
And hopefully once we get back into production, which we hope is soon, we'll have a chance to actually put some seat time in it. Thanks, everybody. We're going to move on to our lightning round, and I'm getting a lot of questions on the internet about this. Here we go. The coronavirus pandemic has sparked home deliveries of new and used cars to rise. Do you think that's going to continue, or is this going to be the new normal? I mean, we already saw an erosion of showroom traffic, but you can get just about anything delivered to your home now, cars and or trucks, you name it.
Yeah, I would say it's not exactly new. I mean, some dealers have been delivering for a while, before this started. It's certainly the high-end stuff, Genesis and some of the Mercedes-Benz.
Lincoln.
And Lincoln. So it's just, I think it'll continue, not to this scale for sure, but if it's always an option, I'm sure a lot of people would love that.
Would you buy a $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 car without driving it?
See, that was my question, whether it's just about the actual delivery of the vehicle, or if it's like, Carvana when you're purchasing it online. Because, you can go to the showroom and, deal with the car salesman and all that kind of stuff, and then say, yep, I drove it, I like it, I sat in it, drop it at my house in 3 days. And
in some states like Maryland, I believe you still have to go to the showroom one way or the other. So
I know someone
could go and have it still delivered. Huh?
I was going to say, I know someone recently that bought our car through Carvana and had it delivered here, and there was even hiccups in the delivery process through them with, saying, oh, some paperwork didn't go through, it'll be there 4 days late, and then something else didn't go right, so it's going to be another 4 days late. So it wasn't the exact seamless process that they say it's going to be, but I'd imagine if you go to the dealership, sit in it, drive it, talk to the salesperson, and then ask to get it delivered, that would be a smoother process than just buying it online.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to really disrupt the way things are done going forward. Maybe more people will know that they have the ability to have the car delivered to their house, but I think it's going to be business as usual for the most part in terms of buying cars. I think the bigger thing is what I'm falling into now is I'm having all my beer and food delivered to my house. So I don't see how I can go back from that personally. Nice, Brian. He's a Zoom master.
Yeah, he's a Zoom guy. And he was just saying before we went on, he needs a delivery. Yeah, I've kind of gotten into it too. I mean, we've had a lot of groceries delivered, and we did go into one grocery store, and frankly, it was kind of becoming a foreign experience. So I guess more home deliveries are in everybody's future, including for cars.
Now, if you could just get a car delivered with groceries already in it, now we're talking.
The perfect world. Let's switch gears and actually switch plugs. We had a question from Denny. What's being done to our aging electrical infrastructure to accommodate the proliferation of plug-in electric vehicles. I mean, assuming that what we're seeing right now with a few of them being canceled is a pause, and at some point there will be an administration probably that will be pushing electric vehicles again. You know, we've had a test during this pandemic about whether the internet can keep up with everybody doing Zoom meetings like this, and I've certainly had my problems at home. So are we looking at that kind of problem with the electrical, infrastructure? Anybody got a thought?
I mean, I'm the farthest thing from an electrical engineer, so I kind of have to base all of my opinions off of what experts say. But between auto experts, which I consider myself and all of us here experts, and electrical engineer actual experts, they're saying it's not going to be as big of a deal as some people who are saying, like, if it will be a deal. It's not going to be an overnight thing where everybody's driving EVs. It's going to be a gradual incline of more and more EVs on the road, which will be an issue if we do nothing. But I think between automakers coming out with technology on, when cars are charged and how they're charged, and then the actual infrastructure, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, when there is a large portion of the society driving electric vehicles, we'll have figured it out by then.
Yeah, if it's going to be a problem, it's going to be way down the road, especially, with gas prices being what they are now, and everyone holding off on EVs. It may be a problem we have to deal with, but no time soon.
Kyle, anything?
I just have to agree with everything, both Brian and Greg just said. That it's not going to be an overnight thing where suddenly so much of the populace is going to be driving EVs that no one's going to be able to plug them in anywhere. And, I'm sure there's going to be a way, other than the low end chargers that people get at home that they can just plug into their wall, or spend a little extra money to get the higher level chargers at their home. I don't think it'll be a problem because it's not enough cars are going to be on the road immediately.
I've seen so many articles that basically say that even when we get 20% of the sales being electric cars, that, most of the charging is still going to be overnight. It's still going to be, 8 or 10 hours where the car is sitting at home.
And that's
really the question is whether or not your home's going to be able to handle it. And if you're asleep, probably. But you started to say something.
That's where the manufacturers kick in and, giving you the technology to choose. Your car can be plugged in, but it's not necessarily charging. And
right.
Another thing is going to be a vehicle to grid. So, eventually when there's that many cars being charged, if it's plugged in, it might be a scenario where that car is acting as storage and maybe giving power back to the grid. And then
your next door neighbor.
Right. And then overnight, when the demand's less from people running TVs, computers, whatever, then it'll start charging again. It'll all be software, essentially, telling it when to charge and when to give back.
I think that's absolutely correct. There's some utilities like the one in Chicago that I heard their president speak, and that's exactly what he's looking forward to, is being able to use people's cars as a storage and then giving them a cut on their electric rates. So, Denny, I hope that kind of gives you an idea that we don't think that's a super big problem. All right, gentlemen, that brings to a close our podcast 229. Brian Robinson, Greg Carlos, Kyle Scanlon, thank you guys very much for giving us your time, and we hope you out there enjoyed watching even on Zoom and on YouTube and wherever else you can find MotorWeek these days. We're still out there on public television stations around the country and also on the Motor Trend Cable Network. Admittedly, at the moment, the shows are repeats of shows we did early in the year, but we hope to be back in production in just a few weeks from now. Fingers crossed. I want to thank our audio engineer back at home base at Maryland Public Television, Jim Bigwood, who normally is doing all of the work of making us sound coherent. Greg Carlos here for setting up the podcast. He's our producer, and our podcast creator back at MPT, Bob Mixter. Thank you all for being a part of our podcast and for keeping MotorWeek on the front burner when it comes to automotive news. I'm John Davis. We hope to see you, and we hope you see us again soon.
You've been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com and RockAuto.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at MotorWeek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series, each week on your local PBS station.